El de aquí. El de aquí no puede entrar.
Aló, Miguel. Nosotros comenzamos la charla, pero no hay transmisión. Ah, ok, ya. Ahora sí. Okay. It seems we might have to restart our talk, and quiero decirles buenos días a toda nuestra comunidad. Por un inconveniente técnico, aparentemente estamos iniciando la charla justo ahora. Y quiero dar la bienvenida a los arquitectos Christian Schweitzer. Hi, Christian. Y Ryu Song. Hi, Ryu. How are you doing? This is our mid-morning, and it is your late night right now in Korea and Seoul. So we really appreciate your effort to be here. Es nuestra mañana y la noche de Christian y de Seoul. Y les damos las gracias por ellos hacer el esfuerzo de mantenerse despiertos y atentos para presentarnos su perspectiva sobre lo que está sucediendo al día de hoy en Seúl. Seúl es una de las megaciudades del mundo, está experimentando un proceso de crecimiento y desarrollo integral enorme, pero viene también con una serie de contradicciones que ellos nos quieren presentar y qué privilegio tenerlos aquí. Ellos que son protagonistas de lo que está sucediendo al día de hoy en esta gran ciudad, nos hablan un poco sobre su vivencia con la ciudad, sobre su experiencia como practicantes y su experiencia también como académicos. I wish you guys could sip some great Dominican coffee, some great waking up coffee. And I might even send to you some in these days, so you can remember us forever. Les voy a leer un poco sobre la vida brevemente de Christian y de Ryul. Ryul nació en Daejeon, Corea, y vive y trabaja en Seúl. Ella es arquitecta, educadora y editora en Seúl. Es cofundadora y directora de la oficina SUPA, Song Schweitzer, y enseña en el Departamento de Arquitectura de la Universidad de Corea. Su trabajo se centra en un enfoque conceptual hacia el diseño, encontrando nuevas formas de ampliar el vocabulario de la arquitectura. Como editora de la revista Subtext, explora temas fundamentales de la vida cotidiana expresados a través del arte y el diseño. Christian Schweitzer nació en Linz, Austria, y vive y trabaja en Seúl. Christian es arquitecto y educador en Seúl. Es cofundador del Museo Ernst May en Frankfurt, Alemania, y cofundador y director de SUPA Song Schweitzer. Actualmente enseña en el Departamento de Arquitectura de la Universidad Hanyang en Seúl y trabaja dentro de la estrecha relación del diseño conceptual y el arte y la teoría de la arquitectura, con especial énfasis en comprender y transformar la ciudad contemporánea a través de su contexto sociocultural específico. Guys, I must say that this is very, very interesting topic, and I'm very curious to learn what this is all about, what your insight, the growth of Seoul is taking place. I have a little feedback from Miguel or Jesus, I'm sorry. And what is it that you are...
yo tengo la laptop mía.
I'm sorry. Jesús.
Tuve que coger una de las laptops de la voz.
I'm sorry, I have a feedback here. Okay. I would be very interested in knowing how did all of this begun for you, Riol and Christian, how this interest in the relation between theory and the status quo of the city begun for you? Where did this interest was born in you as professionals? And of course, I pass on to you the microphone so you can say hello, maybe hola in Spanish, and share with us. The microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hola.
Hola.
I'm Yul, and then he's Christian Schweizer. Actually, we are working and life partner. And then we based in Seoul, as Jesus said. Then actually we met in Germany during the
Great.
studying. Yeah. And then after the architecture studying in Korea, I went in Germany, and then we met. Then actually after university, I stayed there, and then I lived over 15 years. And then 2005, we get the job opportunity here to teaching, and then we are here come back. And then actually this meanwhile it is 15 years here Seoul, the whole Korea, but especially so Korea, Seoul is changed amazing. So I also hardly recognize is what kinds of city here is so. And then actually Seoul is literally is mega city. And then I explained so many times about Seoul to Christian, and then Christian, okay, I know, and then but he was so shocked. And then from the highway from the airport to Seoul in center, and then he just take the picture the outside this huge apartment to the public in Korea. And
Amazing.
then, and then actually because of so many changes, I also had to learn newly this Seoul, and then also this experience influence us our work very much. Therefore, we show you today about this context of what happened in Seoul, and then how can influence our work. And then
That's great.
and then actually Korean business is mine, and English business is Christian. Therefore, I give the microphone Christian. That was, yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. As Yul mentioned, maybe I turn a little bit the camera. Like growing up and being socialized in Europe, I thought I know everything, but then when I arrived in Seoul, it was really a huge shock that things can be so different than where I come from, and this this shock, until today, we cannot really explain what Seoul is. It's really difficult to grasp. As you mentioned, it has 11 million inhabitants, but then in satellite cities that only serve Seoul. So all in all, it is 24 million people.
Wow.
And this is half of the entire Korean population. So it's highly centralized. Everything is happening in Seoul. And this city is constantly transforming and constantly changing. And then to do architecture in this context of this constant change changes a lot what architects actually can do, and in Europe where everything is quite settled and there change is slow. There we wanted to scream as architects. We did very colorful, very provocative architecture, but as soon as we arrived here, we became extremely minimalistic. That suddenly form didn't matter anymore, and are we still here?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, strange.
I can see you and I can see your presentation.
Okay, good. Usually, like as Yul said, Yul always gives the lectures in Korean, and I have to give the lectures in English. This is why I will be speaking today. And usually we don't have to explain Seoul, because we work here and we teach here and we give our lectures here, so that people know the context of what Seoul is. So we were struggling a little bit how to explain Seoul, and Seoul exists on this clash of scale. These are the newest generation of gated apartment complexes, where actually, meanwhile, 60% of the Seoul population lives in these high-rise apartment buildings. This is the older generation of high-rise apartment buildings from the 1980s and 1990s. You see it in this picture on the upper side. Now, then there comes the next scale, like 5-story multifunctional buildings, mostly with shops on the ground and offices, and then apartments on the top. These are huge carpets of this kind of typology, which you see here on the right side. And then there is the this scale that basically came from after the Korean War, when a lot of shanty structures, like favelas, what one would call them, maybe that then developed into more stable neighborhoods. And these are under constant threat to be erased, basically, and replaced with this one. Meanwhile, like the Seoul only looks like this, and looks like this, and looks like this, and these areas are disappearing. But these areas are quite vital for Seoul, because these typologies, they are all monosocial. They are made for a middle class, 2 children, but where do the singles go? Where do the elderlies go? And they are pushed more and more out of Seoul. So Seoul is turning into a more and more monosocial population structure. And we are mostly concerned, like in our praxis, with this scale, where we try to, like most of our clients, they refuse to live in this kind of typology. So these are the only areas where you can still afford to buy a site, where you still can afford to build your own house. And these are also the neighborhoods where the social, the neighborhood in itself works extremely well, in contrast to these gated communities, where basically a certain population is excluded. Here is still a vital mix of young and old, and singles and families of different income, and Seoul really grew in the 70s, 80s, 90s into this generic city, like Rem Koolhaas defined how Rem Koolhaas defined the generic city. He gave 5 points, and basically all 5 points are matching with Seoul. Just the authoritarian, like the dictator, is missing, and Korea got rid of their dictator in the 1980s in a democracy movement. Since then, it's a very vital democracy. I feel like a more functioning democracy than actually in Europe, where we're now running into problems a little bit in Europe. And basically the modernism kind of won in Seoul. This thing you have on massive scales. Like 60% is living in this environment. Then the other prototype for modernism, Le Corbusier, in Seoul, there's like these 4 to 5 story buildings are based on the domino idea in a clarity that we hardly have in Europe. Like this building system is so simple and so efficient, and everything in Seoul is on efficiency, on speed, on build quickly, tear it away again, build again new. And this is for me like a typical scenario. Like there's a Le Corbusier in front of a Walter Gropius, and the whole city is basically based on this concept. And we want to quickly read a short text how we perceive the city to maybe explain a little bit what makes it so extreme. And we call it a love letter to Seoul because Seoul is so absurd that that you either love it or hate it, and we got to love it in its absurdity, basically. Designing and discussing architecture in Korea uses the same terminology as it's used in the global discourse. But looking closer, these terms have a very specific and far more radical meaning in the Korean context than their Western implications. Put into other words, what we know has no relevance in Seoul. What we do has no relevance in Seoul. Everything is sucked up and swallowed by this overwhelming organism. Seoul stretches what we think to know about architecture as building to a point where it almost dissolves itself into an abstract task, disconnected completely from any predefined terminology. And experiencing Seoul, therefore, can consequently only result in a fundamental rethinking and redefining of every step in generating architecture. For instance, context, the context, or better said, the existing, is the starting point for any building task. We are trained to analyze the existing, to interpret the existing, to add to the existing, to build upon the existing, to complete the existing. The immediate existing, as well as the larger context into which we place our design, is the reference point which legitimates and judges our actions. No? We can rely on the existing to establish a communication that links our design into the city and thereby becomes part of the existing. In Seoul, the existing withdraws itself very radical from this communication. An ostensibly heterogeneity, like where everything refuses to relate to anything, where everything is only focused on itself and its own advantage. And when you look closer, it actually reveals itself as an all-embracing sameness. Everything is same. Seoul is an endless repetition of one building programmed to the behavior of its current user. Therefore, every building becomes exchangeable without leaving a gap after its replacement, which reduces the notion of context ad absurdum. Like whatever you build, it basically has a lifespan of 10 to 20 years, then it's removed again and rebuilt. Therefore, there is no existing in that sense. Then time, usually we can rely on time, from the idea of a building to its execution, to the aging of a building, and its eventual renewal or destruction. In Seoul, time is not linear. Time exists only highly compressed to a single point where everything happens simultaneously. The very idea for a building in Seoul implicates already its obsolescence. The speed with which the city is built and rebuilt makes terms like consistency, continuity obsolete. The architect has to provide a solution to a task before it's even phrased. The same contradiction expresses itself in the lifespan of a building. It is detached from the building itself. The value of the building, in contrast to the value of the land, is so low that it has no influence on its very right to exist. Like a small plot costs $1 million US dollars, no, but the building that is built on it costs maybe 200,000 US dollars. So if somebody else buys the lot, they just replace the building on it. And this strange logic makes every building in Seoul a temporary building. No, there is no consistency, which in consequence, like with all the inside a building in Seoul, one is anywhere and nowhere at the same time. The quality of space becomes not a question of relation between different spaces, but an abstract idea of space in relation to itself. So space is only concentrated on itself in a building, in an object, never in relation to the street or to the next building or to a notion of public space. Like this is for us a very typical scene from like basically all interiors in Seoul disconnect themselves from the outside through these screens, and form. Today, everything is possible as long as one finds a good reason for it. No, in Seoul, one doesn't even need this reason anymore. Form generating methodologies that are developed for a specific task are applied in Seoul almost randomly, disconnected from any theory behind it. Form is not generated, it is applied, which is a subtle but crucial difference. Form as the expression of an idea is reduced to form as the expression of form. Therefore, Seoul has actually overcome form without realizing it itself. Form disconnected from content, idea, methodology excludes itself from an architectural process. Form in Seoul just is. It has no other meaning as just being form. And then there comes material, where we are trained to use material for logic of structural logic like to express the meaning of a building through its material. Therefore, material talks. It is coded through a value system that puts our design into a larger architectural context. How we use material says who we are. In a multifunctional, non-determined environment, the question of a material becomes a purely logistic one. Material is used according to its availability, not even necessarily according to its price. Seoul undercuts this architectural value system, where suddenly material doesn't provide information anymore about the status or the representation of a building. Material is used as a necessity, not as a choice. As a building in Seoul only exists in the present, questions of durability, sustainability, maintenance of material does not arise, and a much wider palette of material can actually be applied. Therefore, Seoul has expanded the vocabulary of material that can be used in building by far. A simple plastic foil has the ability in Seoul to last longer than any established building material. With these observations in mind, very fundamental questions arise. Now, how can we design a building that doesn't want to be anything, that doesn't want to relate to anything, that doesn't want to represent anything? A building that essentially has no function, no economic lifetime, lifespan, no value to anyone, because again, the site is more expensive than the building. And how can we design space that doesn't want to be organized, structured, or determined, because everything has to be multifunctional? And how can we still communicate about and through architecture without definitions then in the back of our head? You know, like how we are trained as architects to understand space and the meaning of a building and to understand context. It all does not apply in Seoul, and this makes it extremely difficult to be an architect in Seoul, because you basically have to learn architecture from zero again. Basically, you can forget everything that you learned and have to redefine every aspect of what constitutes a building. And, and to summarize, like there's this Charles Cheng's I think end of the 2000s he developed his evolutionary tree, you know, where he tried to describe like all the from functionalism, postmodernism, like how everything is connected, how everything developed in the 20th century, and the question really comes now: where are we now? And somehow everything in Seoul merges to an all is possible. You can pick from everywhere, from architecture history. It's just disconnected from anything that generated these that actually triggered these developments in architecture. And when you look then a little bit closer, what he calls down here, like he says here, what he says down here, the unself-conscious, like the 80% of the environment is unself-conscious. Like here, he basically writes, these are the buildings that are built without the consciousness of doing an architectural act, no? Where again, just all the methods that were developed by all these architects are just applied, disconnected from the idea behind it. And this, if we now would change his evolutionary tree, then actually the 80% unself-conscious architecture down here, and in Seoul, I would say it's 95% or maybe even 97%. 97% of Seoul is basically built unself-conscious, without any architectural principle in mind. And therefore, it doesn't even make sense anymore to now develop a new theory or anything. So we are basically working in this little dot on the lower right, no, there we are working deep in the unself-consciousness of Seoul. And I want to show maybe some quick examples, like how we react to this, to this impossibility to actually do architecture here, like a neighborhood facility building where we really go on the domino house, that is just an empty structure that then can fill in whatever happens. Now, whoever wants to, whoever will rent it will actually build their own shop or will build their own office in it. So really like empty shells that then basically are programmed to whoever is renting it. And a shop lasts basically in Seoul, it lasts like 3 years. Then a new shop comes and then everything is changed again. And therefore that we reduce basically just to a structural frame, or a competition for a kindergarten in this apartment complex context, in this generic city that is where the program is highly compressed, where we try to find principles that like the functional zones still like still have the largest possible space to breathe in that sense, but from the outside it looks completely generic, and then with the hope that it will grow over time and actually excludes itself again from this a generic communication in the city. Very often we are confronted with really low income housing, where we then have to get inventive. Like this building was usually a single family house, costs like $300,000 in Seoul to build. We have to manage for our clients to basically build it for $90,000, where you then have to become inventive, and then the house will only be used for 10 or 15 years. So this was built on the principle to actually use structural EPS, structural insulation that is used for under road construction, underneath roads. So the whole structure system is actually just an insulation block that forms the entire structure system. Other reactions like these kind of Hanok neighborhoods, the traditional Korean house that is disappearing on an alarming rate because they are not monument protected or anything. So they're just disappearing and replaced by these gated apartment communities, where we tried to develop systems that they can adapt to the spatial needs, because they are taken away and a 4-story building is built on the site, or the whole area is taken away and an apartment complex is built onto it. Like systems that can actually plug into this Hanok and extend it, and therefore give an incentive to actually preserve it for the city. Which then with understreet parking systems, cultural centers that stay completely undetermined, that just give space to let happen whatever will happen, because we know in 5 years something very different will happen. So if we now define very, very precisely which function is where, in 10 years it cannot be used anymore. No, so basically a culture center that is just one big open space where then auditoriums can plug in and exhibition spaces can plug in, and the whole activities within the space can change. This is called community neighborhood community centers, community neighborhood centers. Where again we tried to actually invert the building, that it becomes the Peter and Alison Smithson's street in the sky, where the street is just basically brought up into a building, where again then the functions can exchange and still work and can operate, and with this constant change. And we are big fans of Team 10 and Peter and Alison Smithson, and therefore we mostly work in these very local small communities and neighborhoods, and basically take a lot from their philosophy on how to view a city, to see a city on its different scales, and to try to connect these different scales. This is a renovation of one of these neighborhood community centers that are really vibrant and really, how should I say, really important for these local communities. They basically were built mostly in the 1970s. Again, modernistic block just put here. On ground floor, there is like you can get your birth certificate there. If you need any official document, you can get it there. But then in the basement, in the basement, they have senior, like table tennis for senior citizens. on second floor they have a lecture room and a library, and where pupils can come and do their homeworks. Then on third floor they have community spaces where they do traditional dancing or yoga classes and these kind of things. So they are highly essential. Like they look really bad, really bad, but they are highly essential, and and um, 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 and they are in dire need for renovation. But then for these kind of tasks, there is no budget, and we love to do these kind of projects because there is no budget for it, but there we can work very closely with the local community, and we sit then. This is a photograph from one of these community meetings now, where everybody comes, everybody wants to know what happens with their community space, and they give a lot of input. And in this case, the task was basically like you enter here through the windbreaker. Now then, here's the kind of the service area where you get your documents. Then you go back here into the staircase where you then go up or down to this community functions, and then there's the back entrance. And through long discussions with the locals to understand how their community, because every community center has different needs, so we mapped what they all have. Basically everything that is red they want to keep, they still need. But then the task is to add this program into here, and you see, how can you add this into here? There is no space anymore for it. So there again, it doesn't become an architectural task. It doesn't become a design task to do a nice community center. The task is basically to reorganize, and in this reorganization to then enable their community, and you see, like, this is the before and the after. It's basically a parking place, and then you saw in the beginning this very defensive facade, where again, with relocating the archive, and then changing the entrance, like now making the disabled ramp. Basically the access is now the disabled ramp into this space, where then they access the other functions, and to basically reorganize also the outside, like to connect the street into the inside, to provide a new community space here that is connected to the community, but also to the administration workers. And this can open and then expand to the courtyard, so that their community activities also can overcome the strict boundaries of the object. Like everything is an object with this strict boundary, and to expand to the public space. Like you see maybe a little bit the new established relationship between now an outside community space and inside community space, the ramp that goes in, and this is now basically linking this object that is very defensive, linking it to the city, making it, opening it up to the possibility to extend basically to the outside, and therefore also taking the pressure from the inside of the building also a little bit outside. And you see, like it works actually extremely beautifully how they discovered their outside space, and now do like neighborhood festivals outside, and use this little stage towards the community space for an extended communication. And also inside, to provide, basically just to provide shelves where they can put all the stuff that these community centers need inside, but almost no structural change, almost no design, like trying, again, very low budget, just reorganizing the necessity of the local community and to strengthen it and to make it possible to happen. Actually, like these are some photos, some images. And to show another example, what we learned or we had to learn quite drastically, that we as architects we design a building. Now, like we have a client. The client has certain needs and wishes. So we come up with ideas. This is a single family house in one of these shanty towns, in like these favelas where they were able to buy a still cheap lot, again with very low budget to build a house on here. And we as architects, like we dream up, we communicate through models. This is a structure model that we built. We draw plans, we make details, but how do we actually know that what we design then works? This translation of the design idea into the reality. And there comes a moment when on the construction site, when suddenly the space emerges, when suddenly this is the first time we actually see that what we planned might work, that it actually might be a good building or not. So it takes quite a long time to this point. And again, the cheapest way to build in Seoul is concrete. Brick is much more expensive than concrete. Wood is very much expensive. Concrete is the cheapest way of building. So again, with a low budget, so it's a concrete structure, but at least we try to bring in wood, like we try to bring in material that makes a house a little bit more lively through the roof and the floors. And then the architectural photographer comes. Somebody else comes and documents your work, and they make, you see here like the 1960s, 1950 houses that are now taken away and replaced with newer, higher houses. It's actually a quite beautiful site with a lot of forest around, these kind of buildings, again, for us, it became very unimportant to do anything that represents, that kind of says, oh, I'm a single family house, or I like a talking architecture, because it's just not necessary to let architecture have an identity. It's almost like the famous novel from the Austrian author Karl Kraus, Robert Musil, the man without character. We started to build houses without character that deliberately try to have no character. And this is then the facade to the forest entrance zone, the rooms, the bathrooms, the living room in conjunction with the staircase, then the master bedroom. And we feel very uncomfortable with these kind of photography because it shows a moment where we look at the form, but we don't look really at the life that is happening in the building. So at this point, we still don't know whether this design can be successful or not. And to quickly show, this was our very first project when in 2000, when we graduated from university. It was an office renovation here on the second floor of this high-rise building. Basically, we just had to build a wall from the office to the tea kitchen, and we built this strange wall here, where then the architectural photographer comes and makes this image, and that freezes the architecture into an object, while we prefer to look at it this way, that you have actually that you see relationship between the invention and the intervention and the space where you have time within a photography, where you feel a notion of that it's not about the wall, it's about what the wall might influence people, how they use the office, or how they might how this might influence the influence your behavior within this now tea kitchen and office space. And therefore, we ask an artist to take photos of our building. So like a different view, not this curated view of the architectural photographer, but somebody who doesn't want to represent the building. His name is Hee-chon Kim. He's meanwhile a quite famous media artist in Korea. He expresses his art through film and through photography. And he made these images, that now are zoomed in, that look at details, that find basically that find that don't show the object, but that show the spaces, and maybe also the absurd spaces and the unusable spaces, and how the building relates to the outside, the reflection of the outside within the building. The client didn't like the sink, so it has to be thrown out and replaced with a different sink. This was this moment, or then things that basically are the construction company made a mistake here, and then it turned out this way, and then again how the sunlight comes into the house, that what kind of atmosphere that can such a house create. And we like these photos much more. They for us, they represent more what we are trying to achieve, that the house becomes a place to live, and that becomes a canvas for your life, where how it looks like doesn't matter anymore, but it has to have the ability to allow life in it, like these strange like incidences in the house, and for us this much more represents the essence of what architecture has to do, and since then we let our photos be taken by artists, not by architectural photographers. Like we trust this view more to convey a spirit of our buildings. And then in this case, something very interesting happened. The client, like the husband, is a journalist, and the wife, she studied Buddhist philosophy, and she's a writer. And she has a blog where she writes articles and reads books and does book discussions and so on. And on her blog, she then started to publish photos that were taken in this house. And these photos turned out to be for us really beautiful, because again, they don't show the house anymore. They show the relation of the human being to the surrounding, or show the relation of the human being to how they utilize or use the space. So these are all photos that she published on her blog, happening in this house. A birthday, a rainy day, preparing food. In autumn, how the outside changes. Then winter comes, and a leaf is on the concrete wall outside, and then in spring, planting in this protected courtyard. drying your blanket, after washing, and how time and nature and influences a house, and the cat in the winter, the street outside, again a rainy day, and for us this is the architecture, like not the building is the architecture, but the life that is made possible, and this is this might sound quite banal in a context of Europe, or maybe even in a context of Middle and South America, because in Seoul nobody has a home. Where you live is an investment that you sell after 2 years, and then you buy a new investment. So our students basically they are 22 years old, but they moved already 10 to 12 times in their life. While I, as a child, I moved 1 time. So I had a home, but here in Seoul, nobody has a home anymore. Yeah, just a house or an apartment for 2 or 3 years, selling it, buying a new one, selling it again. It's all investment now. But to provide, then architecture has a very fundamental task to actually provide a place that can become a home, that might last longer than 2 or 3 years or 10 years. That really, that you start to can identify with the place you are living in, and make it your own. Yeah. These are the execution drawings of this project. So it's like 105 pages of plans, and for us architects, like this is actually the most time we spend on. Like we look at it day in, day out. Like we never see the space until it's realized. So how do we know whether our design can achieve becoming a home? That can achieve that life can happen in it, and for us, we started to overlap our execution drawings to see how complex our design is, the complexity of how, like, to test whether our design is too simple, and if it reaches a certain level of complexity, then we know we reached a point that it's still a simple design, but it will allow a lot of different kinds of use, and adapt to the user and adapt to the changing life of a user when the children move out, when one grows old. So these are like maybe let me jump to the this is now the overlap of all 105 plans, where you cannot really read anymore what the house design is, but we know for ourselves, if our execution drawing reaches this complexity, that the house will be good. It became a kind of different kind of language. Like you see it here animated. I hope the frame rate is quick enough. Probably not. No, how this execution drawing densifies more and more, and this became for us a principle, basically to test whether architecture is successful or not. Now, would my question be, how much time have I got left? Can you give me 10 more minutes? Then I would talk a little bit about the Venice Biennale, or shall we?
Yeah, sure. I personally am delighted to be part of this conversation and to learn everything you are sharing with us. So please serve yourself.
Okay, then give me 10 more minutes, please. I know we are already at 1 hour. I wanted to, because this is now what kept us busy like for 1.5 years. This damn Venice Biennale that was delayed 2 times, so like this is our most recent project in that sense. And I think the Dominican Republic is for the first time represented at the Venice Biennale, with Lydia Leon, that made this very beautiful, not paint, collage paintings in this church. It's just breathtakingly beautiful how it looks like, with the tobacco leaves, right?
I think it's the second time.
Oh, it's the second time. Oh, okay. Unfortunately, we couldn't go. No, like we are not vaccinated, so we would have to quarantine. But then we have here teaching obligations, so we had to do everything remotely. And the Venice Biennale 2019 already ended in a catastrophe. Like a century flood, where whole Venice was flooded. So they had to close down the Venice Biennale earlier, and then Corona happened, and it was delayed for 1 year. And the Korean Pavilion is created by Haewon Shin, quite interesting Korean architect, or maybe I should say that like or let me start like this. We started the 2 years ago, or 3 years, in 2018, together with Haewon and other people, a filmmaker, a choreographer, an artist, a literature, like a literate. No, what it's called, a writer, and from social sciences. We founded an alternative school, which was called Mijiheng, a social design school, because what applies to the architecture in like the mechanisms in this highly capitalistic system of Seoul also applies to the education. The education is how should I say, is highly highly rigid, only to produce a workforce for big companies. Like the Korean universities, not just in architecture, in all fields, they produce employees. They don't produce independently free thinking minds to do basically to think on their own. They're just trained to operate within companies, which very much speaks to this capitalistic system that Seoul represents. So we always felt the need to establish a different kind of education, a different kind of school, and we organized like summer workshops, like 2-month-long workshops, basically within the semester breaks, that students can see a different point of view on how Seoul works and how we should deal with Seoul. But not just from an architectural point of view, from humanities, from art, from filmmaking, from all these. And there's our close friend Haewon Shin. She's sitting here up here. These were our students in the summer of 2019. This is he's from humanities background, and a writer. And you see, we squat spaces. We find nice spaces from culture organizations where we know somebody to squat in their space and to give lectures, to hold our workshops. and the idea was basically like here's Hewan again. Zizek, the famous philosopher who was so kind and gave a lecture for us. And she had the idea then to actually apply for the curation for the Venice Biennale to not make an exhibition, but to bring the school to Venice. No, to have not an exhibition at the Venice Biennale, but actually to run the 6 months of the Venice Biennale just like a school. So we have like 50 programs, workshops, lectures, and generative dialogues, and so a huge catalog of events that will take place. But basically, the question was now, as we always squatted spaces, now we never were confronted with how to bring our school into an architectural expression. And this is the Korean pavilion, and it's a quite odd structure that that looks this way because it's actually, again, it's a temporary structure. It doesn't really have a building permission, and it was meant to be taken away. So it was built 1994 by what's his name? Kim Sok-chol, a Korean architect. But it was built under the premise that maybe after 2 years it has to be taken away again. So it's a steel structure that is just on piloti that can be removed anytime. It has no building permission, but it lasts since 20 years. So I hope it will last longer, that they will not take the Korean pavilion away again. And now the task was how to bring a school into this space. Now, how to like, what does a school need? Like, this is the empty space you see here on the left is actually an old office, a brick building that then later was a public toilet within the Giardini, and basically the Korean pavilion just docks onto this historic building. So like what makes a school from an architectural infrastructure? And in Seoul there are a lot of these spaces where you can like a lot of community spaces where children can make their homework, or that you can rent for 1 hour to do a seminar or lecture. So basically all you need for a school is this: you need a table, a board, a shelf. In Korea, you need an air condition because it's very humid in summer. Like a very basic infrastructure, but of course we could have now just taken all this and shipped it shipped it to Venice. So we started to look at kind of the essence of architecture, like what does it make to come together and to discuss things, and we were looking at this famous photography by Manfred Schiedhelm of the Team 10 meeting in Bonnieux in France, where the Team 10 met basically in the shadow of a tree. You see here a stone table with coffee, a natural, like a stone wall. Here on the left down here, you see that's actually a building. So it's taken from the second floor of a building. And we kind of started to analyze. We cut out the people, like what makes this space? What makes this space that is so essential and so simple? What is the mechanism behind it? What do we actually need to bring people together? Like different forms of analysis of erasing the furniture, to separate the furniture, to simulate the people's flow, like a heat map. If I now have more people, how they would expand and gather within the space, then starting to redraw it and trying to reconstruct the floor plan basically of this scenario. And then basically like here, like this is now the people, basically this is in the break time when the people go away, but these are the things they have. Where do they put their stuff? They take their shoes off. How furnitures are arranged, and we try to have this essence within the pavilion. And this was then our concept collage, that for a school, yeah, we need a gathering space, basically a bench, and some chairs that we can flexibly put whatever scenario. Is it a lecture? Is it a seminar? Is it whatever it is? Then to establish a kitchen where we can cook together and eat together, because like food is like the most essential social communication tool of all. Then of course a storage where then everything you need you can then store away. You take a table, you store the table away again. And of course then the house that is kind of in this photography, just like as a small hint. So we to have a rest space, because when you do the workshop all day, like to have a little bit of privacy for 20 minutes and to charge your cell phone. And this is then the pavilion design, with the central gathering space, with the workshop area, with the storage where you can put the tables. They can go into storage or go out, or here can be put tables. This is the kitchen that is also flexible. That on the roof is then the toilet. There's actually a toilet on the roof. So and then the old brick building, we put in a Korean paper floor as the rest space. But we hate this. Like this is now a communication tool again, that is frozen in time. We like to show it like this. This is an overlap of all the scenarios we drew, of all the possible placement of the tables, of all the possible arrangements of how the workshop can happen, of maybe then doing a seminar in the rest space. So for us, this actually represents the essence of what we are doing, not this frozen moment in time where it never will look like this. But it will basically it will appear. If I take all the 6 months together, this is actually the representation of the pavilion, and not this one. And this is now how it turned out. What is her name? Ion.
Kim Ion.
Kim Ion, a landscape architect, developed this quite amazing carpet out of weed. Like this is where actually brooms are made from, like dried weed, where you make traditionally Korean brooms from, that is then weaved into a net. And this was in the autumn of 2019, like when we produced this to send it to Venice. Now it's here within the space that. Then you see the benches. Back here is the workshop area. That now, because of COVID, like the first workshop will happen, I think mid of this month. Like the first student will come, I think, from London and do the first workshop there. So then the place will start to change, and they will rearrange the tables however they need it. Then here in the back, we basically have a pin-up wall. This was not just for the opening, but then whatever the students produce goes over here now for pin-ups and for discussions. Here on the right is the storage where you can put your things into storage. Our kitchen that is fully operational. Very well equipped, like very essential in Korea. The rice cooker now to cook rice, and then the paper room with the Korean paper called hanji. It's a traditional technique, 4 layers of paper, and then with the varnish with oil stain, but soy oil as oil stain. Here you see how they applied the oil stain. And it's a very fascinating floor that you only find now in traditional Korean houses. So very seldom. It's not done very often anymore because it has to be redone every year. It has to be exchanged. Like it comes a new layer of paper over it. But it already starts now, even without a workshop. People start to use it, charge the like write a little bit, to relax a little bit. This is like these were we were very happy about these kind of images. That how then children start to make the space their own. How they discover a space and then turn them into their own playground. This for us was then a sign that the space kind of works. This is our. The children playing Catch Me in our pavilion. This is a iconic photography, from children playing hide and seek in Aldo van Eyck's famous pavilion from 1967. So we really like this relationship that because we didn't want to do something to look at. No, we wanted to do something to use, and therefore the architecture becomes something it becomes a relationship, a process, a mutual influence, an interaction, a social enabling. Like basic functional needs, like a good working environment, adaptable to any given space, adaptable to any scenario of use. The plasticity is a term that is for us important. The user can influence the space, but the space also influences its use back. Like it's a dual relationship, that the user can change the space, but also the space influences how we use the space. Like all this is like these principles are for us kind of realized in this scenario, that actually has only one fixed space, which is the gathering space, the grass carpet. Every other space is actually unfixed, can change, can evolve, and maybe to close with the future school manifesto that we wrote, that expresses very much what we believe architecture should be or has to do. Architecture is fundamentally social. Architecture is by us all, for us all. This is a quote taken from Team 10, right? It shapes our lives at every moment of our existence. Therefore, architecture is not appearance, but content. Architecture is not economic, but humanistic. Architecture is not building design, but social design. Architecture is not object, but relationship. Architecture does not begin nor end with building. Architecture does not exist to function, but to influence. And architecture does not exist to organize, but to provide opportunity. So we are not organizing space, we try to provide opportunity. Architecture does not exist to serve, but to enable. And architecture is a cultural act, but architecture is also a political act, and it has to be seen as such to develop its full potential. We have to be aware that we do something political, and that we do something social, and that we do something cultural. We are not just building a building. So architecture is a process, and not a result. And all this makes architecture fundamentally social for us. And sorry for taking so much of our time. Just to make the last point.
Architecture is fundamental social.
Yeah. Will and Christian, it's been amazing to follow you guys while you took us into this great journey. that started with a discussion on the current state of affairs in Seoul, Korea. And it caught my attention that, as you were talking about how fast the city is transforming into a probably seemingly lifeless appearance or zeitgeist. I was recalling these great architects from the 70s and 60s in Japan, Tange and Kisho Kurokawa. They proposed these discourses on cities that had to be metabolistic and buildings that had to be suitable to transformations upon the emergence of new needs within the building and within the city. And, it called my attention that something that it could be often quoted as an advantage and as a virtue, such as adaptability, could also have a dark side. Because you were talking about, somehow, and I want to be respectful when I use these words, you were talking about a dark side of this capacity of a city to adapt itself. And it seems so Korean right now, but it could also have implications to many other cities in the world. Right now, Santo Domingo, mainly triggered by its condo law, it's very difficult to transform and to adapt. And we've been criticizing heavily this painful difficulty because it's quite tough for the state or for the very private industry of developments or for the municipal authorities to change the city, to improve it. Because to terminate a condo here, and almost everything is migrating into the condo system. To terminate it, you need 100% of co-owners agreeing on terminating it. And
here,
that applies.
Can I interrupt you here? Here we have a different rule. Only 50% have to be for it. Which is the other extreme, because if you own a single family house and it can be taken away from you anytime, you just need 50% of the people around you that they want the redevelopment, and you lose your single family house. No? So again, we are on the dark other side of this.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting, and it seems like there's a duality of metabolism and adaptability versus memory in the city. As I was learning from your perspective, and that's something we're not yet facing. But it's very interesting to know it from afar and know it ahead, because that's pretty much where we are heading in our near future, maybe in the next 10 to 20 years. We have a very vibrant city in terms of economy. We have the fastest growing urban economy in the continent here in Santo Domingo, 4.5% of growth annually, economically speaking. So we might be heading toward that state of affairs somehow.
But you have a different consciousness, no? Like you know what you have. I really often have the feeling like Korea has a very difficult history. They were colonialized. They were occupied by Japan for 30 years, and Japan very fundamentally cut Korea from its traditions. Like they tried to make Korea forget their building history and their cultural history with very tough laws. Even Koreans had to give up their Korean name and adapt a Japanese name. Like they were very, like this was almost a cultural cleaning of Korea. And then came the Korean War, where everything broke down, and Korea came out as the poorest, one of the poorest countries in the world. And then like in the 50s, basically all these these favelas, these shanty towns, Seoul was a huge spread just of really bad building foundation. No? And again, there was no way to build a new tradition. And then came the dictatorship, which again pushed their own agenda of modernization. And then came democracy, and now like very much Korea is disconnected from their traditions, and therefore they are struggling to see any value in their city, while you see a lot of value in what you have. No, so that's why I say we are on the extreme other side. I have the feeling. So whatever you will do will probably never become so extreme, because you are aware of your cultural heritage. But Korea was basically 80 years disconnected from their own cultural heritage through the political systems.
Between them come is a new liberalism, is a capitalism.
Yeah,
and then,
with democracy then came the neoliberalism that then destroyed again a different level of history, because the neoliberalism basically knocks away the rest of the historic city very, very quickly. You know? So I'm not worried about you.
Well, we face similar pressures, and we're trying to make the most out of it in a way that makes sense to everyone integrally. And again, it's very useful for us to learn about our possible near future while we learn from your perspective on the present of this amazing megacity, which is Seoul. And it seemed to me also that this adaptability that would otherwise be a virtue might not be working as a virtue at its full potential, because it's not guided by urban planning or by urban aims grown out of participation, but it's guided only by market unharnessed. Because I believe in the sustainable economical growth of a city, and market has to be harnessed by best practices, by a determination of the will of the people living in the city, and a full understanding of the context of the culture, and a full understanding of best practices around the world. And it seems like this adaptability of the city is being only guided by an unharnessed endeavor of market. And another thing that caught my attention from your words was the term self-conscious, and it reminded me on the writings of Christopher Alexander, perhaps. And it comes to my mind that this could also be about a higher scale self-consciousness that turns people into unself-conscious at the individual level, I guess, because it seems like a higher scale activity what's taking place in the city, guided by these huge economic waves of development and market interaction. And it's very interesting, again, because it could be a reflection of a part of our near future. And then, amazingly, you ended up talking about the virtues of adaptability, because at the building level, you were, pointing out that the pavilions have been used for different purposes, and it seems like adaptability is the overarching concept here. Initially to render its dark side, but then at the end pointing out
I have to say, many architects tried to build buildings in Seoul. They are highly functional determined, but it really doesn't work. So that yes, we have this pressure to be adaptable, like they can adapt to everything, but so we have to find the positive side in it, because if we work against it, it has no chance. So it's really like we had buildings from friends. They built really beautiful multi-story like office buildings. They, after 15 years, they were knocked down because they were not able to. Now there come new users, new shops, new owner, and they couldn't adapt to the new needs. So if you ignore this, your building will disappear after 10 years. You have to start to integrate it into every concept that you have, and then you have to start to find again the positive sides in it.
Sure. Again, it seems like the struggle between metabolism or change versus memory. Change versus memory. I guess it's a very complex duality and contradiction.
Yes.
And another thing that called my attention to point out a last observation was your interest in rendering the meaning, the built image in our minds of space, and not so much positivistic image of things that could transcend from individual to individual, but personal image of the space, a personal experience with the space through the image we build in our heads. It linked me to Husserl and phenomenology and the value, the worth of how we perceive things in parallel to the unchanging meaning of things themselves. I think we must go back to the worth of the personal experience with space. And I really loved this collage that you did with the juxtapositions of images as a reaction to the classical architectural photograph. It was amazing, and I hope our students can make notes on it. Christian, Seoul, Christian and Real, thank you very much again for your time. We know it's very late for you guys, and I hope that soon we can all share a great Dominican coffee here in our seashore.
I have to admit, I never was to Middle or South America. Like it's a blind spot in my.
You better come. You better come.
Now you have Africa, Arabia, like Asia, everywhere. But this is it's not easy to get there. Kind of.
You better come. You have reasons to come now. You have family in us. You have a new academic family here, new friends, and we can all share some great hot Dominican coffee at first time in the morning while we do some exploration here in the city and other interesting spots in the country. So we will wait for you. Let's hope the pandemic allow us to do this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again very much, and hope to see you soon in Venice, maybe next October.
I hope so. We hope, we are planning to come.
So our first coffee will be in Venice then.
Yes.
Okay.
Take good care. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.